I didn't expect it to start with silence. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy, uncomfortable silence that hangs in the air when something's changed, and neither of you wants to be the first to admit it. My name's Brian, and the guy the first couldn't stop thinking about was my roommate, David. Yeah, that kind of story. We'd been living together for almost a year. 2 bedrooms, 1 shared bathroom, a tiny kitchen that always smelled like burnt coffee, and whatever David was pretending to meal prep that week. It was supposed to be temporary. Cheap rent, easy setup. No drama. That was the plan, at least. David was the kind of guy people assumed they understood in 5 seconds. Tall. Broad shoulders, calm voice. That effortless confidence that makes straight guys slap you on the back and girls lean in a little closer. He never talked much about his feelings, but he was always there, fixing stuff, listening, showing up. And I told myself I didn't notice the way he looked without a shirt, or the way my chest tightened when he said my name, or how the apartment felt empty when he wasn't home. I told myself a lot of lies. The night everything shifted, we were both exhausted. Long work days. No energy for conversation. We ate takeout on opposite ends of the couch, the TV playing some dumb show neither of us was watching. David broke the silence first. "You've been weird lately." I blinked. "Weird how?" He didn't look at me right away, just stared at the screen, jaw tight. "Distant, like you're somewhere else, even when you're sitting right here." That hit harder than it should have. "I'm fine," I said automatically. He finally turned to look at me, really look at me, and something about his expression, careful, almost restrained, made my stomach flip. "You always say that," he replied, "but you don't sound fine." I shrugged, trying to laugh it off. "You've turned into my therapist now?" "Someone has to," he said. "Michael moved out, remember?" That was new. He hadn't mentioned Michael in weeks. Ever since our 3rd roommate left, it had just been us. 2 people sharing space. Too much space, maybe. I muted the TV. The quiet rushed back in. "Brian," David said slowly, like he was choosing every word. "Can I ask you something without you getting defensive?" That warning alone made my heart start racing. "Depends what it is." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. I noticed his fingers were tense, white-knuckled. "Why do you flinch every time I get close to you?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I hadn't realized he'd noticed. The way I'd shift when he brushed past me in the hallway. The way I'd suddenly find reasons to leave the room when he sat too close. Not because I didn't want him near, but because I wanted it too much. "I don't," I started, then stopped. David exhaled sharply like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "I'm not trying to make things awkward. I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't even know why." That did it. The words hit somewhere deep, somewhere unguarded. "You're not losing me," I said quietly. "Then tell me what's going on." I looked at him. Really looked at him. The familiarity, the tension, the way his knee was angled toward mine without him realizing it. If I told him the truth, everything could fall apart. If I didn't, it already was. "I'm scared," I admitted, his brow furrowed. "Of what?" I swallowed hard. "Of you." David didn't pull away. He didn't laugh. He just stared at me, eyes dark and unreadable, as if something he'd been suspecting had finally been said out loud. And in that moment, I knew there was no going back. David didn't say anything at first. That silence stretched, thick and unbearable, and for a second, I wished I could grab the words back, shove them back into my chest where they'd been safe. I stared at my hands, suddenly very aware of how loud my heartbeat sounded in my ears. "Scared of me?" He finally repeated, quietly. I nodded. "Not because you've done anything wrong. You haven't. You're you." "That doesn't explain much, Brian." "I know." I stood up and paced toward the kitchen, needing space, needing movement. The apartment felt smaller than it ever had, like the walls were leaning in to listen. I didn't plan for this, I said, leaning against the counter. I moved in because the rent was cheap and you seemed easy to live with. And you are. That's the problem. David shifted on the couch but didn't interrupt. You remember when Michael used to joke that we were basically an old married couple? I asked. David let out a short breath. Yeah. I laughed every time, I continued, but part of me hated it, because it didn't feel like a joke. I risked a glance back at him. He was watching me the way he did when something mattered. Fully present. No phone. No distractions. Just me. When he moved out, I said, everything got louder. The looks. The silences. The way you started asking how my day was and actually waiting for the answer. David frowned slightly. And that's just being a decent roommate. Maybe, I said. But it didn't feel decent to me. It felt intimate. That word hung between us. David stood up slowly, as if sudden movement might break something fragile. He didn't come closer, didn't crowd me, and somehow that made it worse. So you pulled away, he said. Because you caught feelings. I closed my eyes. Yes. I waited for the awkward laugh, the nervous apology, the immediate distancing. None of it came. Instead, David rubbed the back of his neck, staring at the floor like he was piecing something together that had been scattered for a long time. Okay, he said finally. That single word made me open my eyes. Okay, I echoed. Yeah, okay. He looked up at me then, and his expression wasn't shocked. It was conflicted. That explains a lot. My stomach twisted. In a bad way? He shook his head slowly. In a way that makes me realize I haven't been as honest as I thought I was. My breath caught. What do you mean? David took a step closer, still careful, still giving me space, but close enough now that I could feel the heat of him, could smell that familiar clean scent that made my chest ache. I told myself I was just protective of you, he said. That I cared because we were friends, roommates, whatever label made it easier. And now? I asked, barely above a whisper. And now I'm realizing I get annoyed when you talk about other guys, he admitted. I notice when you don't come home. I think about you when you're not here. He swallowed. And that scares the hell out of me too. The room went still. David, I said, my voice shaking, are you saying? I don't know what I'm saying. He cut in gently. I just know that, whatever this is between us, it's been here longer than tonight. I nodded slowly. Yeah, it has. We stood there, neither of us moving, the tension thick but not uncomfortable. Honest, finally. I don't want to mess this up, I said. You're too important to me. David's lips twitched into a small, sad smile. Funny. I was about to say the same thing. Then, after a beat, he added, but pretending nothing's happening isn't working either. He was right. It never had. Then what do we do? I asked. David hesitated. Then, carefully, like he was stepping onto thin ice, he held out his hand. We start by not running away from it, he said. One step at a time. I looked at his hand. Then I took it, and the moment our fingers closed around each other, I knew. Whatever came next would change everything. We didn't let go right away. That surprised me most of all. Not the hand-holding itself, but how natural it felt. Like this was something we'd both been resisting for so long that the moment we stopped fighting it, our bodies already knew what to do. David's thumb brushed slowly over my knuckles, a small movement. Careful. Asking, not taking. Is this okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, it's really okay. He let out a quiet breath, something like relief slipping through it. Good. Neither of us smiled. This wasn't a grin kind of moment. It was heavy and real and fragile, like we were holding something that could break if we moved too fast. We ended up sitting back down on the couch, closer this time, our shoulders touching. The contact sent a constant hum through me, like my whole body was tuned to him now. "So," David said after a while, "how long?" I glanced at him. "How long what?" "How long you felt this way?" I hesitated. "Do you really want to know?" "Yes." I swallowed. "A few months. Maybe longer. I didn't notice it at first. It snuck up on me." He nodded slowly. "Same. I kept telling myself it was just habit, that living with someone makes you care more than usual." "But," I prompted. "But I don't worry about other people the way I worry about you," he said. "And I don't miss other people when they're just in the next room." That made my chest ache in the best and worst way. "I almost moved out," I admitted. David's head snapped toward me. "What?" "I didn't do it," I said quickly. "I just looked at places. Thought distance might fix it." "And?" he asked. "And the idea of not seeing you every day felt worse than staying," I said quietly. "So I stayed and hoped it would pass." David was quiet for a long moment. "I'm glad you didn't go," he said finally. "Me too." The room felt warmer now, safer. Still tense, but not sharp anymore. Soft, like something unfolding instead of snapping. David shifted slightly, his knee brushing mine. This time, neither of us pulled away. "Can I be honest about something else?" he asked. I nodded. "I don't really know what this makes me," he said. "And I don't want to promise something I can't understand yet." I appreciated that more than any grand confession. "I'm not asking you to label anything," I said. "I just didn't want to keep lying to you." He studied my face, like he was memorizing it. "You're important to me, Brian. However this looks, however it ends." "Same," I said. "That's the part I'm sure about." Another pause. Then David did something small, but huge. He leaned in. Not all the way, just enough that his forehead rested lightly against mine. "If this ever feels like too much," he murmured, "you tell me. I don't want to cross a line you're not ready for." My breath hitched. "You're not crossing anything." We stayed like that, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. No rush, no grabbing, just closeness that felt earned. After a moment, he pulled back slightly, searching my face. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. The question alone made my heart slam against my ribs. "Yes," I said. "You can." David didn't hesitate this time. His lips met mine gently, like he was still afraid of breaking something. The kiss was soft, slow, exploratory. No urgency, just confirmation. And when we finally pulled apart, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Because whatever we were now, friends, roommates, something more, we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross, and neither of us wanted to. We didn't rush into anything after that. That might sound strange, considering what had just happened, but it felt right. Necessary, even. Like we both needed to sit with it, to let the reality of us settle instead of letting the moment sweep us away. David leaned back against the couch, one arm stretched along the backrest. After a second, he glanced at me, clearly debating something. "You can come here," he said quietly. I did. I slid closer until my shoulder tucked under his arm, my side pressed against his chest. He stiffened for half a second, then relaxed, pulling me in just a little more. His hand rested on my upper arm, warm and steady. Neither of us spoke. The TV was still muted, some characters moving silently across the screen, but it felt like the rest of the world had gone quiet. All I could focus on was the rise and fall of David's chest, the way his thumb made slow, absent circles against my sleeve. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I said. "Just processing." He let out a small huff of a laugh. "Same." Minutes passed, maybe longer. Time felt strange, stretched and softened around us. "I've never done this before," David admitted suddenly. I tilted my head to look up at him. What part? This, he said. Letting myself want something without knowing where it leads. That vulnerability hit me harder than the kiss had. I don't need you to have it all figured out, I said. I just need honesty. He nodded. I can do that. His fingers tightened slightly on my arm. Not possessive. Grounding. I'm not confused about you, he added. Just about what it means. That was fair. More than fair. We can go slow, I said. As slow as you want. David looked down at me then, really looked at me, and something in his expression softened. I don't want to slow down because I'm scared, he said. I want to slow down because I care. My throat tightened. That's good to hear. He smiled faintly, not his usual easy grin. Something quieter, more sincere. At some point, I realized how late it had gotten. The apartment was dark now, except for the glow from the TV and the streetlights outside. I should probably sleep, I said reluctantly. David nodded, but he didn't let go right away. Same, he said. Then, after a beat, Do you want to sit like this a little longer? I smiled. Yeah, I do. So we stayed. No more kissing. No pushing boundaries. Just closeness, learning the shape of something new. Eventually, we stood up together, awkward and careful, like two people relearning gravity. Good night, Brian, David said at my door. Good night, David. I paused, then leaned in and kissed his cheek. Soft, brief, intentional. He exhaled slowly, eyes closing for just a second. Hey, he said as I turned to go inside. Thanks for not giving up on me. I looked back at him. Thanks for meeting me halfway. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, one thought kept looping through my mind. Nothing about this was simple, but for the first time in a long while, it felt right. The next morning was different. Not awkward, not tense. Just charged in this quiet, under-the-surface way that made every small thing feel bigger than it should have. I woke up earlier than usual, mind already racing. For a split second, I wondered if I'd imagined everything. The confession, the kiss, the way David's arm had felt around me. Then I stepped into the hallway and smelled coffee. David was already up. He stood in the kitchen in an old gray t-shirt and sweats, hair still messy, leaning against the counter while the coffee maker sputtered like it was fighting for its life. He looked up when he heard me and froze. Not in panic, just awareness. Morning, he said. Morning, I replied. There was a beat where neither of us moved. Then he smiled. Small. Real. Did you sleep okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. You? Eventually. That made my chest warm in a way I wasn't prepared for. I grabbed a mug and leaned against the opposite counter. The kitchen suddenly felt too narrow, every inch between us buzzing with possibility. So, I said lightly, still feeling okay about last night? David studied me for a moment before answering. Yeah, I am. Are you? I wouldn't change it, I said honestly. He exhaled, like he'd been holding something in. Good. The coffee finished brewing, and he poured 2 cups without asking, handing one to me like it was the most natural thing in the world. Our fingers brushed. This time, neither of us flinched. We stood there sipping in silence. I've been thinking, David said slowly. Oh, he smirked. Relax. Nothing dramatic. Just, I don't want this to turn into something we only acknowledge behind closed doors. My heart skipped. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want to pretend you're just my roommate when you're not, he said. But I also don't want to rush you or myself into something we're not ready to define. That sounds surprisingly healthy, I said. He laughed softly. Don't get used to it. Then, more seriously, I'd like to take you out. Like, actually out. Dinner. No couch. No safety net. The word out echoed in my head. I'd like that, I said. His smile lingered this time. The day passed strangely easily after that. We both went to work, sent a few casual texts, nothing flirty, just check-ins that felt intimate in their own way. When I came home that evening, David was already there, dressed nicer than usual. Dark jeans, clean jacket, hair actually styled. I raised an eyebrow. Trying to impress someone? Maybe, he said, eyes flicking to mine. Dinner was simple. A small place down the street we'd walked past 100 times but never gone into together. Conversation flowed easier than I expected. Stories, laughter, shared silences that didn't need filling. At one point, David reached across the table and rested his hand near mine. Not touching, just close. "I'm glad it's you," he said quietly. "Me too," I replied. Walking home, the night air cool around us, our hands brushed. And this time, he didn't hesitate. He laced his fingers with mine. No audience, no announcement, just us. And as we stepped back into the apartment we'd once shared as nothing more than roommates, I realized something important. Whatever this was becoming, it wasn't fragile anymore. It was growing. The apartment felt different after that night. Not new, familiar, but warmer. Like the space itself had adjusted to us finally being honest about what we were doing inside it. David kicked off his shoes by the door, keys clinking into the bowl like always. Same routine, same walls. But when he turned to look at me, there was nothing routine about the way his eyes softened. "Do you ever get the feeling," he said, "that something's been waiting for you to notice it?" I smiled. "Yeah, I think it gets tired of waiting sometimes." He chuckled, stepping closer. Not rushing, just closing the distance that had once felt forbidden. "I meant what I said earlier," he added, "about not pretending." I nodded. I know. We stood there for a second, just looking at each other, like we were both still adjusting to the idea that this was allowed now, that we didn't have to pull back or second-guess every movement. David reached out, brushing his thumb lightly along my wrist. "Come sit with me?" We ended up on the couch again, legs tangled this time without either of us commenting on it. His arms slid around my shoulders, natural and unforced, like it had always belonged there. "You ever think about what happens if this gets complicated?" he asked quietly. "All the time," I admitted. And I still want it," I said. "Even knowing that," he nodded. "Good, because so do I." There was something grounding about the way he said it. Not dramatic, not impulsive, just certain. David leaned his head back against the couch, eyes on the ceiling. "I used to think feelings like this were supposed to hit you all at once, like some big moment where everything clicks." "And instead?" I asked. "Instead, it feels like realizing you've been leaning on something solid for a long time," he said, "and only now noticing it's holding you up." I rested my head against his shoulder. "That might be the most honest thing you've said yet," he smiled. "Don't tell anyone." We stayed there for a while, just breathing together, the city humming faintly outside. At some point, his hand found mine again, fingers fitting like they'd practiced. "You know," he said softly, "whatever this turns into, I'm glad it's with you, Brian." I squeezed his hand. "Me too." Nothing flashy happened after that. No dramatic declarations. No rushed decisions. Just two people choosing each other again and again. In small moments, quiet touches, and the steady understanding that this wasn't a phase or a mistake. It was a beginning. And for once, neither of us was afraid of where it might lead. It didn't all click into place overnight. There was no dramatic moment where we woke up and suddenly knew exactly what we were to each other. What we had instead were days that slowly stitched themselves together. Shared mornings, late-night talks, quiet routines that felt deeper now. David started waiting for me before bed. Not in an obvious way. Just little things. Asking if I was almost done. Leaving the hallway light on. Sitting on the couch scrolling until I wandered out of my room. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we didn't. But we always ended up close. One night, A few weeks later, we were lying on opposite ends of the couch, legs tangled like it was second nature. "You ever regret not saying something sooner?" I asked. David thought about it. "Yeah, but I also think we needed to get here the long way," I smiled. "Figures you'd say that." He turned his head to look at me. "Brian, yeah? I don't feel like I'm questioning myself anymore," he said quietly. "I feel like I'm choosing." That landed harder than any confession could have. I shifted closer, resting my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "I'm glad you chose me." He wrapped his arm around me, firm and sure. "I am too." A month later, we told a few people. Nothing big, no announcement, just honesty. Michael laughed and said, "Finally." Like he'd been waiting for us to catch up to something obvious. The apartment didn't change. Same creaky floors. Same bad coffee maker. But we did. We learned each other in ways that went beyond attraction. Habits, fears, the quiet insecurities that come out at 2 in the morning. We disagreed sometimes. We backed off when one of us needed space. We came back every time. One night, as we stood brushing our teeth side by side, David caught my eye in the mirror and smiled. "What?" I asked. "I was just thinking," he said. "This feels like home." I rinsed my mouth, leaned over, and kissed him. Easy, familiar, real. "Yeah," I said, "it does." And that's the thing. It didn't start with fireworks or some unbelievable moment. It started with honesty, with staying instead of running, with two people finally admitting what had already been there all along. Sometimes love doesn't crash into your life. Sometimes it's been sitting right next to you the whole time, waiting for you to notice. Life didn't suddenly turn cinematic after that. Bills still piled up. Work still sucked some days. The coffee maker finally died for real. And we argued briefly about whether to replace it or just accept bad coffee as a personality trait. But something steady had taken root between us. David started calling me without thinking. "Hey, I'm grabbing food. Want anything?" I started keeping mental notes of the way he liked his eggs, the shirts he wore when he needed comfort, the silence he preferred when he was overwhelmed. We moved through the world like a quiet team. One evening, months later, we were on the fire escape, legs dangling over the edge, watching the city soften into dusk. David passed me a beer and bumped his shoulder into mine. "You ever think about where we'll be in a year?" he asked. I smiled. "Sometimes, but not in a scary way anymore." He nodded. "Me neither." There was a pause. Then, casually, but not casually at all, he said, "I'm glad I didn't miss this." I turned to him. "Miss what?" "Us," he said simply. I leaned my head against his shoulder, the city humming below us. "Yeah, me too." It wasn't loud love. It wasn't reckless or overwhelming. It was the kind that shows up every day, the kind that stays.